Hello, welcome to Yellowcoat's Pass It On online event. It's great to see you here.
Yellowcoat was set up in 2017 to promote the voices of women. We've presented work at the Catford Fringe, Camden Fringe, Vault Festival, Acacia Arts Festival and the Drayton Arms. We are now so excited to be working with the space.
Our first Pass It On event was in June 2019 at the Brockley Jack, where we presented 12 new monologues written and performed by women. Then in 2020 we presented a further 26 monologues, and now at the space in 2021 we are bringing you a further 16 new pieces of work over 3 wonderful nights of theatre. To date we have worked with almost 80 emerging creatives.
The space is a theatre in a converted church on the Isle of Dogs, East London. They are passionate about supporting new writing and increasing access to the arts. Check out space.org.uk to find out all the wonderful work that they're doing.
Some of our monologues tonight contain content warnings. Details can be found on the Space's website under the booking tab and also on our Twitter and Facebook.
After the films are finished, there will be an online Zoom Q&A which we'd love for you to attend. Details of this can be found in your email from the space. We hope you enjoy the performance.
My name is Elsie Ward, and when I was 15 I could have stopped World War II. I'm looking for my crown. If I can feel the weight of it again, I can carry the guilt. If you've got it, it might look pretty on, but it won't bring you luck. Give me back my guilt. I was your railway queen in 1936. My dad, he was a conductor, good at chatting to folk as he clipped their tickets and brightened their day. I was as shy as Silent Shite, he used to say. But he put me in the running for railway queen, and, well, to bring me out of myself, I suppose. I was shy, skinny and gawky. In my later years, I saw shy, skinny, gawky girls on the front covers of magazines. Elfin and androgynous is what they are now. Dressed up in my railway queen frills, I looked unexpected. And what was also unexpected was my W.C. Fields impersonation. A woman drove me to drink, and I didn't even have the decency to thank her. People found that kind of thing funny in the 1930s. I didn't say much as myself, you know. Found it easy using other folks' voices. I was surrounded by big voices. Yorkshire railwaymen loved the sound of their own voices. Me, Yorkshire, Yorkshire, me, beer. I listened, learned and mimicked. Tried to make folk laugh, you know. in other voices, never my own. I don't know if my dad rigged the vote, but in 1936 a boyish-looking, unexpected girl became a railway queen. And I was bobbed on the train off to meet Mr. Hitler. It was nearly 20 years since a whole generation of young men had been off by the First War. It was getting a bit tense between us and that Germany again. I was to go on a friendship trip organised by the railway unions of Great Britain and Germany. My suitcase was full of my mam's paste butties, a paste crown and a frilly frock. I was hustled along by the Yorkshire railwaymen and one woman, a nurse. Just in case, you know. Just in case of what? She'd served in the First War, kept on being battered by life. Indestructible Ida. Me, the Yorkshire railwaymen and indestructible Ida chuffed our way across Europe, and I chuffed up my mam's paste butties. Motion sickness, homesickness, fear. No one told me what to do when I got there. I'm 15. I've never been further than Scarborough. I'm armed with a stick of rock and a framed photo of York Minster. Oh, the railwaymen will talk. So I think I'm just supposed to look pretty. But I look unexpected. Indestructible Ida gave me a dose of salts for the sickness. And the salts gave me a dose of sleep. Oh, they were strong. I could hear other voices around me. Yorkshire railwaymen being all self-important, so I floated off. I was bobbing into others' carriages, you know. I could see a young woman with her nose stuck in picture bows, head full of film stars and romance, Fred Astaire and Ginger Rogers on the front cover. She's travelling to a new position, a governess. No time for romance. A shy young man is sitting opposite her. A clerk. Oh, no one ever hears him. He's been trying to meet her eyes over his crossword puzzle. And when the ticket inspector asks him a question, he stutters. Oh, he'll never ask her. So I, floaty Elsie, I give him a voice. Oh, but you're lovely with your face, with your cheeks so warm. There is nothing I can do but love you. Oh, I'm Fred Astaire singing to Ginger Rogers. And my Fred Astaire is rubbish, but it doesn't have to be great because it's got her attention. And she thinks it's him singing to her because he's seen her magazine. And she laughs and the ice is broken. Oh, and I float on. There's a young boy craving his father's approval. So I give the man a voice. I love you, son. Oh, and down the corridor, there's a group of new recruits all joshing with each other. I spy the one that's hanging back. Oh, he never fits in, so I give him a voice. Have you heard the one about... Oh, I can't tell you that, it's a rude joke, but it has all the other recruits in stitches. Oh, and he's made a start. I feel powerful, and I feel like I matter. Well, we queen may be, but I'm a queen of somewhere else. I'm small, elfin, unexpected. Was I a fairy? Was this Germany trip a cover and indestructible Ida was delivering me back to my fairy folk? Oh, I felt my bony shoulders were wingbuds, but now I was dreaming. The salts were through me, and I woke up with a jolt. We were here. Germany. I suppose I expected the meeting in Berlin to be like a railway union tea party. Bit of bunting, scones, ginger beer, a raffle with a meat prize. It wasn't. There were hundreds of folk, all lined up, all military-like, and the bunting was massive and angry, all red and black. She was on the other side of the stage to me, the German railway queen. Blue-eyed, blonde, sleek, not skinny. Bob her on a sun lounger in Saint-Tropez with a floppy hat, two-piece in Clark Gable, and she'd be on the front of Picture Post. She smelled obedient, freshly scrubbed and ironed. She winced at Mr. Hitler's shouting. He was a little man with a Charlie Chaplin moustache, but very shouty. Little men try to make themselves bigger by making other people feel small. I could see she felt small, and I didn't like to see that. Had I been Floaty Elsie, Queen of the Fairies, I'd have taken his voice and said something funny and made her laugh. Only I couldn't get a word in edgeways, and I didn't speak German. I was surrounded by blustering Yorkshiremen, and yet here was another blustery, shouty man telling everyone what to do. I decided no blustery, shouty man was going to scare me or her. We were queens. Mr. Hitler had a Charlie Chaplin moustache, and everyone knew who Charlie Chaplin was. He had no voice, but he was powerful. It could make people look and laugh without one. So I did a bit of a Charlie Chaplin shuffle back and forth. She looked too scared to smile, so I bobbed my finger under my nose and mimicked Mr. Hitler's shouty face. She looked away. Suddenly, it was my big moment as railway queen. This is what I'd come here for. I had to walk daintily across the platform and present my sticker frock and the framed photo of York Minster to the German railway queen. Only I didn't do it daintily. I did it as Charlie Chaplin. As Charlie Hitler. Like this. A giggle started to spread, and I thought, if I can get that giggle going through this big crowd, then you can all have scones, ginger beer, and a meat pie, and all be friends. No more shouting. Indestructible Ida had other ideas. She put her big body twixt me and Mr. Hitler and the railwaymen, so they didn't see me mocking him. In hindsight, it was probably wise. But what if they'd all laughed? Instead of howling, they'd be howling at the silly little man they were all following into hell. Of course, I didn't know it would be hell then. But I wonder if she did. My crown was paste. Her crown was proper. She finally smiled as she accepted the gifts from a boyish-looking, unexpected girl who was mocking Mr. Hitler. She took my crown off, and she bobbed hers on my head. It was heavy. It was so heavy. I kept that crown. I thought I could go back one day to find her. But it would be a long time before a girl from York could have a friend in Berlin. The crown will have gone out to the charity shop when I got taken into the home. I was an old woman whose marbles were going, stuck doing impersonations from the old films to other old folk whose marbles were going. W.C. Fields, Charlie Chaplin, a rubbish Fred Astaire. Of course, they all thought it was Charlie Chaplin. You know, different now. But what if I got that giggle going? We might all have been shot. Or we might all have been safe. Is it silly to feel guilt for what could have been? I want my crown back. I want to feel its weight. I want to carry my moment in history. If you find it and put it on, I want you to know what that means.
Today in the attic, I found your fingerprint. It was trapped, perfectly sealed within a piece of tape. The tape was attached to a box on one end and a label at the other. The label said, "Cups." The handwriting a familiar scrawl, the extra loop at the top of the C, which sometimes meant people mistook it for an E. and the S sloping away towards the bottom of the tag. And I waited for the familiar pang of loss. And it never came. They say that when you lose somebody, it is like a bubble in a box. The bubble is large, it fills the box, and for those first few days, weeks, it fills you so completely that you feel like you can't breathe. Then over time, it shrinks, smaller and smaller. It never goes away completely, but it floats around inside you. The bubble of grief. And every so often it bumps against the edges of the box. And you remember that it's there. The smaller the bubble gets, the less it bumps the edges. When I first heard somebody explain this, I think it was in a video online, I liked it. It made sense. But then I started to look out for the bumps, to watch out for the things that might trigger a blip, a pang, a pain in my chest, a lump in my throat, and I'd get anxious, I'll start to panic. I began to fear my own grief. A friend bought me a session at a counsellor. I only went because they paid for it. The counsellor said to embrace my grief. See it as a path to walk, not a wall to climb. They said if I paid £60 for another session, they would talk me through it all. I didn't go back. I traced the word with my finger. The extra loop on the C, the slope on the S. And I placed my fingertip on your fingerprint, pushed down as if I were touching you. I pushed harder and harder, waiting for the surge of grief I should have felt, wishing for it. And nothing came. I opened the box. It was empty. No cups. And then I cried. Not because I missed you, although I do still miss you, but because for a moment I panicked that I'd lost your cups, that you were going to yell at me for losing them. How could you lose all of my cups when I put them in a box with a label on it? Why don't you take better care of my things, of my house? Why did it take you so long to clear out the attic anyway? And I wanted to tell you that for weeks the house still smelled of your perfume, and I just couldn't face it, that going through your stuff felt like an intrusion, that the house got so dusted, and I knew that you would hate it, but I'd left it too long, that the thought of trying to clean it overwhelms me and so much, and I just try not to look, that sometimes I call out hi when I walk in and forget that nobody will answer, that I can't call it home anymore because you're not there. As I drove back to my flat, I wondered about the box, the label. Where were you when you wrote it? A uni room, a tiny apartment. Did you know that when you packed up all your cups, you would live in the same house for the next 50 years? Raise children there, see neighbours come and go, share hundreds of cups of tea and coffee and wisdom and love. Did you know that that box would sit empty in your attic all those years with just your fingerprint for company? Did you know that one day everything you owned and loved would be packed up and carted away with just the scent of your perfume left behind? Someday, probably soon, a the new owner will climb that ladder and enter the attic and find that box. And they'll see that piece of tape and the label that says cups. But they won't recognize your handwriting or your fingerprint on the tape, or my fingerprint on top. But perhaps they'll know that a person who needs a whole box for their cups must have a warm heart, a warm home, and perhaps that is enough.
Okay. I guess if I had to answer to define my problem, I'd say I am a functioning sex addict. Which isn't really a phrase that's said very much, or ever, as far as I'm aware, but it really should be, because it is 100% a thing. And no, you perverts, I'm not just going to sit here listing all my devilish escapades, as much as I know you want me to. As much as I would like to. Actually, I stand corrected. I am not a functioning sex addict. I am a non-functioning sex addict, which just makes me a sex addict, which feels... horrible? I was a functioning sex addict. That's how I made it through uni. A master's, half of a PhD, that was the beginning of the non-functioning part, and 5 years of a job that pays for me to be here with you charming bunch of narcotics in this... well, it's essentially a spa, isn't it? I used to argue that you couldn't have sex for the wrong reasons. Sex is always a good thing. Unless it's bad sex, but you can get over that by having good sex. Unless it's rape, but then it isn't sex. That's very important, and I have to say it because really, some people don't know the difference. Sorry, I didn't mean to stare you down when I said that. Actually, if you want to grab a drink after, I'm joking. You can't drink at a spa. Sorry, I don't know why this is group therapy, not a TED Talk, which is something I'm more used to. Not trying to show off, just being honest. So, where was I? Ah, yes. Non-functioning sex addict leading to semi-functioning alcoholic. Though I am proud to say I stayed clear of the drugs, apart from a bit of coke on a Friday night. But when you're an artist or in finance, and I personally think I managed a combination of the two, it's not really a big deal, and it stayed like that for me. I have two vices, sex and alcohol. And I drink a lot of coffee, but that's not a vice. You know those women, and men actually, who sit round a table in a cafe when their kids are at school and say, coffee is my vice, when they order a latte with a double shot. That is not me, that is ridiculous. And anyway, I think any stay-at-home parent is probably an alcoholic. I know my sister is, and she's still functioning. Just about. But she's got kids, so her family don't expect her to come to a nice spa like me. Our family. Perhaps it would be helpful for me to think a little bit about when all this started. I mean, I was a virgin until I was 19, which always surprises people. I say people, but I don't talk to people about my sex addiction. I talk to my friends. Yes, I do have a few friends. But they're all quite headstrong, go get the fucking boss fired for being a pervert. I will be CEO before I'm 30, but also pretend this job is not dominated by a bunch of chauvinists. Unemotional, I am not cold, I am honest kinds of women. So when we talk about my sex addiction, we always have a good laugh. They say things like, Lottie, you lost your virginity when you were 19. Weren't you bonking every Friday at the lower school disco that the boys got invited to? And I say, no. I went to a state school where we saw boys every day and they were not exciting. In fact, they were horrible. And then we have another good laugh about how the fuck I managed to get into this job when my 10 GCSEs are from the local comp. They don't like to admit that I have a problem because then they'd have to admit that they have several. They called yesterday, Lottie, darling, how's the spa? So I told them what fun we're all having and how lovely you all are. Yeah, so school was not fun. Boys were not fun. The best thing about school was chemistry with Mrs. Lint, like the chocolate, who was gorgeous and had me thinking I was a lesbian until I was 17. But I'm not going into that right now. And then my best friend, Emma. Emma was an anomaly. Someone who everyone liked and was popular without being in the popular group, and somehow managed to get invited to all the parties whilst being friends with me, which was impressive. It's not that I was bullied. I was just ignored, mostly. Once the boys in our tutor group were rating the girls before school, I was first labelled a 7, which I was quite pleasantly surprised by, but then Ben Fishface Robinson announced, but Emma is an 8, so Lottie is probably, and then they all agreed I was more of a 5.5. And degree pass rate is 40%, so it's not too bad. But you can imagine it wasn't a great thing for my already crippling anxiety and deep insecurity that I was completely unfuckable. It's amazing how early that feeling kicks in of being unfuckable. Or rather your level of fuckability. Because as a woman, I've learnt that I am fuckable by default, but there are different levels on the scale, which is confusing because you don't want to be fuckable by default, but since you are, you want to be high up on the ladder. But if you can't be, it's a massive fucking double whammy of shit. So yeah, I had a feeling of being low on the ladder when I was about 6. But obviously I didn't know what it was about at the time. I just knew that the boys didn't really care about what was in my lunchbox. And there wasn't much of a target in Kiss Chase. At all. Anyway, it would be insensitive for me to talk for too long. I mean, I know that's the point, but you've all got stuff to say. So I will cut to the first big thing that confirmed my position as an emotional cripple. I lost Emma when I was 14. She'd started getting really thin about the year before, and at the beginning of year 10, she didn't come back in. We'd been on the phone all summer. She always spent it in France with her family because of course she was half French. And I was invited, but my parents didn't like her parents, so they never let me go with her. Fucking classic. They fuck you up, your mum and dad. If they just let me go. Emma and I might have had very different journeys. Anyway, because they didn't get on, our parents never discussed anything in the interests of their children, and I was expecting to see Emma in school on Monday. So when she wasn't there, I was worried. I called her mum. Emma was in hospital. She'd got too thin. She'd almost killed herself with it. I went to visit her and I couldn't bear it. If Emma wasn't happy, Emma, my perfect friend, my hope, my happiness, then how the fuck could anyone else ever be happy? She said to me, "I'm sad, Lottie." It completely broke my heart. I said I'd go visit her every week. Well, I didn't. And I didn't call her. She didn't call me. I haven't seen her since. I know she's alive. and she's a creative person and does charity work, basically the opposite to me, but not much more than that. See, that's when it would have been nice for our parents to make something happen, because I think at that age it was bigger than either of us could handle. It's been 17 years since I saw her in the hospital, and I think about her every day. I miss her. I dream about her. School went from being horrible to pretty much unbearable, so I did the classic, put everything into my work. I'd always done like a bit above average at school. I was someone who understood what the teacher was talking about when they explained the nth term for the first time, or the significance of music in Shakespeare and its relation to the spheres. So when I started working really fucking hard, my grades went through the roof. That is a privilege that I am grateful for and what has possibly kept me alive, so I'm not trying to show off when I say I am extremely fucking bright. I'm just being honest. The thing is that being bright and having good grades is equated with being successful and being happy, and that is a fundamental error to the whole way our society functions. Or in some ways doesn't function. I know that's simplistic, and I'd love to have a big discussion about it with you all over our communal dinner, but right now I'm talking about my problems. I lost Emma. I gained incredible academic opportunities, and yeah, I went to Oxford. Now, at 18, starting university, I had the shock of my life. My level on the fuckability ladder went from down here to right the fuck up here. It shook my whole world, my identity, everything. There were opportunities everywhere. In short, I became prolific. Yes, of course, there was slut shaming, but this was also at, I think, the beginning of the reclaiming of the word slut and what that meant, if it should be allowed to mean anything. And I felt powerful. I could have pretty much anyone. And I could make people feel as small as I felt, if I wanted. I never did that, by the way. I somehow nailed this combination of making my way through a whole group of friends in a month, sometimes at the same time, whilst being really fucking nice to everyone and getting first in everything. It was dizzying. And I was killing myself. I got a place on a grad scheme at an extremely high-powered banking firm, and on this particular scheme, I was the only woman. I could have gone somewhere else, somewhere less male, but I didn't fucking want to. There's no group I feel more comfortable with than average-looking men. I played it safe that first year, no one at work, only strangers. But then I became a permanent hire, and when there are only 12 women in an office of 100, that's a lot of material to work with. I reckon I covered a good 45% of it, and not just the under 50 group. Yeah, there are a lot of regrets there. Am I degrading myself? See, I don't think I am. I'm just being honest. At first, I kept things under wraps. Each rendezvous was our little secret. But boys will be boys, and it was only a matter of time before my reputation came into fruition. Seemed fine for a bit, and it wasn't like the whole office knew. Among my little group, it was a sort of joke that I thought I was okay with. But then it all came to a head at the Christmas party last year. 4 of the guys who I'd had a particularly good time with, they'd been on my grad scheme and we were friends. Kind of. They hatched a plan to humiliate me. Give me a taste of my own medicine, as one of them called it. I disagree, because my medicine was pretty nice as far as I was concerned, and this was really, really not. So I'd developed a kink. I buy 2 of every pair of pants. Yes, this is relevant, lest my favourites should be destroyed in some ghastly period situation, and was on a 6-figure salary, so fuck it, why not? Anyway, I'd got into the habit of leaving a pair behind after each conquest as a sort of souvenir. Yes, it's a bit cat pissing on their territory, and I guess it was some weird power thing, but whatever. Maybe I got too cocky. This tradition was interrupted somewhat by my sleeping with a particular colleague, Bobby, more than once, which is really not my style. 1 night stands only, 2 at a push. But he was actually quite sweet, and he didn't have the easy arrogance of most of the other men that I worked with. I also found myself not acting when we were in bed. And I did not realise how extraordinary that was until it happened. So this sounds like the beginning of a happy ending. Oh, but I must now assure you that it really, really is not. The Christmas party. I'd arranged to meet Bobby in one of the meeting rooms at 10 p.m. He said he'd never done it at work before and wanted to try it. This would be our 5th time, which for me was about as close to a relationship as things could get. Was I developing real feelings? Surely no. At 10:05, it's amazing how far you can get in 5 minutes, Jake, Rob and Alistair burst through the door, phones out for a photo shoot. We stopped, of course. Twats is all I thought. But then Bobby, with genuine shock and indignation, said to them, his friends, "Wait, that wasn't part of the plan." The plan. Oh dear. Blocking the door as I redressed and covering their eyes in some ridiculous and pointed charade, the boys explained they had a present for me. Well, they sent me back to the party for my present. It took me a while to notice my pants, hung up alongside the various Christmas decorations all around the room, with a little label with my name attached to each. 10 pairs. A silent, semi-anonymous message of hate. Extraordinarily, apart from the people who were in on it, and at that moment I felt it must be everyone, no one seemed to notice until I started rather inconspicuously ripping them down. To be honest, the fact that they were there with my name on them didn't really matter to anyone else, like Ellen, our chief, my boss, a woman I hugely admire. It was a cruel and anonymous trick played out by a jealous colleague, nothing more. So it wasn't that got me fired. Nor was it the photos of me in the meeting room with Bobby. As far as I'm aware, they were meant as more of a gesture than something to be shared round. I think they were either deleted or kept in some private wank bank. It was that, as I stumbled to the door, pants in hand, Bobby ran after me, all rambling, flustered, upset. I didn't realise they were going to take it so far. "I really like you, Lottie." So I picked up the nearest glass and I smashed it in his face. That's what caught the attention of Ellen and everyone else. To be fair, I'd been losing my composure a little bit prior to that. On more than one occasion, I got too drunk at a work party and leapt onto the nearest table shouting, "Money isn't real!" subsequently falling on the floor. So it was a combination of that and the physical assault on my colleague that sent me on my way. Of course, I couldn't explain. Ellen was like the kind of mum who is completely perfect, but you would never discuss sex with, and I know that seems... Well, the whole thing is fucked, but I had to get out of there anyway. I'm not saying it was that job that made all of that happen. If it weren't for that job, I'd probably be evicted by now, getting drunk and prostituting myself under a bush on Hampstead Heath, never able to find the help that I need. And that is what happens to a lot of people. They will never have the life or the care that they deserve. Why am I like this? Some deep insecurity, surely, yes, but where does it come from? What has been so terrible in my life to justify my inner ugliness? I don't know. All I know is that if I keep drinking, fucking, hardly sleeping, I will be ugly everywhere and I won't know who I am. I feel like my body is all I have. Sorry, I've lost where I was going with that. I think I better. I'll leave it there. Thank you for indulging me.
I've two of the little shits. Boy and a girl. Hard work, but beautiful. I would say that though, wouldn't I? It's all worth it in the end, isn't it? They look like their dad. Dark hair, dark eyes, pale skin. My little demons. You'd look at them and you'd never think I was related. I used to wonder if they'd been swapped, that my real babies were somewhere else being raised by another mother. Have you seen that film? Years ago. Had that woman from Back to the Future, I think. It was a Hallmark film, I think. Actually, no, it probably wasn't Hallmark because they do the Christmas ones. I saw Steve Guttenberg in one of those once. What happened to him? It's a true story though. These two mums, their babies were accidentally swapped at birth and it was all about getting the right one back. Typically, the one with the money ended up getting both. There was a good couple of months where I wasn't convinced. He said we weren't bonding. I'd done all the things they tell you, you know, sleep when they sleep, bathe when they bathe, shit when they shit. I was even doing well with the breastfeeding, proper gold top. None of that blue watery stuff. Yeah, but even though I'd seen them, felt them rip me apart, 35 stitches, I just wasn't sure. I mean, there's photos of us all smiling, him kissing me, kissing them. It just wasn't really me. He thought I had some kind of postnatal depression. Made me go and see a doctor, demanded it. I spent hours talking, reassuring. I refused the drugs, gold top after all. And then that dark hair sprouted. The smile appeared and I looked into those dark eyes and all I could see was him. Now, although they look like him, they act like me, have my mannerisms, habits. They hate tea, love the rain. Lily blinks more than she should, and Jamie fiddles with his left earlobe. My dad did the earlobe thing as well. They even speak like me. No doubts anymore. They were his, and they were mine. I made them. I grew them. I bore them. I love them. And now, of course, he tells me through solicitors' letters that they should be his, and only his. Rejected for the tight, cunted upgrade. There was a New Forest. You ever been? Oh, it's big. Lily kept moaning about the cold. Should have worn your gloves like Mummy told you. Jamie, all grown up and responsible like. Oh, Lily hated him telling her what to do. He's 20 minutes older and don't you know it. But they itch and they smell. You're the one that smells. No, I don't, Mum. Pack it in the pair of you. They went quiet, sullenly walking ahead of me, occasional mean stare passing between them. I saw Jamie relent first, his kind nature getting the better of him. He passed one of his gloves to her, and he put her other hand in his pocket. Oh gosh, she initially protested, obviously. Never one to be beholden to others, but the cold, and Jamie's smile won through. It's those little kindnesses that matter. Mum always used to say, judge a person by their actions and not by their words. He adored her, and she him. Always looking out for each other. I don't know whether that's a twin thing or just normal siblings. Truth be told, I was jealous. I'm an only child, or as their dad would say, a lonely child. Lonely adult. Despite the cold, it was really bright and sunny, and the beams of light were coming through the treetops and creating the most, amazing patterns all over the forest bed. I can see a dragon! Quick, Mum, hide over here! They began jumping around, trying to avoid the light spots. The burnt leaves becoming lava and the snail trails, fairy dust. And gradually we got deeper into the forest and the light became less. And the game was harder to play. Their cheeks were shiny and red from running around, and the crisp air was filled with their smoking breath and exhausted giggles, a silence only broken by their presence. I watched, my body aching with love for them. I have a picnic. Shall we sit down? I lay out a blanket and they happily flop down exhausted. Did you bring snacks? I'm starving! Smiling silently, I pulled sandwiches, crisps, sweets and drinks from my backpack. All their favourites. Their eyes growing bigger and their smiles wider with every pile I laid down. I poured out the hot chocolate, sprinkled marshmallows over the top, much to their delight. Well, we clinked beakers. I watched as they greedily devoured the lot, sharing their crisps and swapping their sweets. I saw them become sleepy. I wrapped another blanket around us, snuggled down, encouraged them to lay their head either side of me. I breathed in their smell, kissed their lips. I love you. And he's not going to have you. I often wonder if we'd gone deeper, would we still have been found?
The first rule of gardening, and sorry to start with a negative, but there you go, is that squirrels are bastards. James Bond villains, the Blofelds of the Bougainvillea. No, that's not right. The first rule of gardening is that you have to go into the garden. For me, gardens were just places where my stilettos would pin me to the lawn. At parties, I'd pivot around like a sundial, downing a Pimm's and another. Gardens were for sad people. My neighbour, Kirsten, was big on planting and pruning and worrying about an early frost. And I'd say, good for you. How nice to have a hobby. To be fair, I was very busy. Busy. Up before dawn, brisk 20 minutes cardio, and then dash out of the house, wrapped in my gorgeous Max Mara coat. I could go days without seeing the sun. Didn't matter. Beauty's the game. Oh, that's the name of my company. It's not like, a boast. I mean, look at me. Or don't look at me. But I showed how, with hard work and the right products, anyone, well, almost anyone, could be beautiful. I used to go to these workshops for female entrepreneurs. Things like dressing for success. And this American woman, head to toe in designer gear, would tell us to dress for the job we wanted, not the job we had. She'd show us how to tie a scarf, wear bold primary colours. Wear pastels, you get pastels, and no one wants that. Oh, earrings give you power. See? Power. No power. 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 So, after you go into your garden, you have to... Oh! Did you see him? That bloody squirrel! Ha! There. Usually all that commotion would have Kirsten peeping her head over the top of the fence. But, anyway, so, where was I? If you are a beginner gardener, like me, then bulbs are the way to go. Hyacinths, irises, crocuses, tulips are my favourite. You just stick them in the ground and see what happens. When Kirsten first moved in next door, I was sort of... We'd known each other before, sort of, from school. I think she even used to piss the teachers off in those days. She was that earnest, always doing extra assignments, helping with the board displays, being kind to misfits. Not entirely sure she was where she was one herself. I kept her at a distance. Civil, but no encouragement, you know. Hi there. We must. Got a dash. However, having a stay-at-home mother next door had its advantages. She'd take in my packages and keep an eye on my place. Sometimes I'd drop off a basket of free samples for her and her daughter. Peace. In retrospect, though, perhaps I could have done more. Kirsten was a catastrophizer. I'm not sure if she'd always been one, but by the time her partner, Ben, you can imagine, left her, disaster was Kirsten's long-awaited guest. The neighbourhood WhatsApp group stopped responding to her alarms about potential intruders, local air pollution levels, injured hedgehogs, a harmless eccentric. And peace. She couldn't wait to go off to university for just a little, well, peace. But when actual disaster hit, Kirsten took it surprisingly calmly. How were you when it happened? Brave? Calm? Carrying on? Spools of toilet paper and a magnum of Carex at the ready? I was... not so great. I remember this Tom and Jerry cartoon where Jerry, that's the little mouse in case you'd forgotten, hits Tom, the big cat, full in the face with a frying pan. And Tom just sits there vibrating with this big old flattened frying pan shaped face. That's what it was like for me. Just doing. My business didn't even last 2 months. I barely survived the spring. I'd eat bowls of crunchy nut cornflakes soaked in water. I fell asleep, wrapped in my coat, my beautiful coat. I drew down the blinds and only answered the door when my wine delivery appeared. I couldn't bear to be seen. Weeks and weeks went by. Then it was Kirsten who brought me out again. As if I was a wild animal who needed coaxing closer and closer with breadcrumbs. It's funny how the very qualities that can make someone irritating Their earnestness, their plainness, their total uncoolness can be the same things that make them, I don't know, lovable. God, that is not a word that rolls easily off my tongue. Kirsten convinced me to put a friendship gate in our shared fence so she could come straight over. We built that compost bin over there, got some little boxed vegetable planters, and put bee-friendly flowers all the way around the border. How strange it was to cooperate, rather than compete. I'd spent so long leaning in, stepping up, pushing ahead. Those were such happy months. Of course, Kirsten was still Kirsten, and she had some funny ideas. When she'd go to the post office, she'd get a long stick and put this little green gardening glove on. Oh, wait, hang on, I've got it. Funny, I know. She'd stick it out in front of her and walk along like that, keeping others at a distance. At the crossings, she'd use it to press the button. Everyone thought she was mad. I said, "You may as well say, 'Stay clear, I'm a loony.'" Kirsten laughed. She stuck the stick out at me and I held its little gloved hand. We stayed like that for quite a while. Slight digression. But in my experience, I would say sex with men is like geometry. You work out the angles and dimensions, and you form your perfect, or more frequently imperfect, triangle, and then operate within that agreed vertex and repeated motion. An isometry in metric space. And with Kirsten, it was more like, you thought I was going to say gardening, didn't you? All those untrimmed hedges and mossy soil. I think I've worked that metaphor long enough. It was a language lesson. Or perhaps more like relearning your mother tongue, as it were. Or perhaps it wasn't a subject at all, or we were more like subjects and objects all at once, whatever. Oh, we were careful. We stayed outside. One day we were lounging on the grass and Kirsten said to me, "Do you know what we should do? Go inside?" "No, it's getting cold." "Build a yurt." Well, I saw us, decades into the future, two handsome crones huddled together in our glorious yurt, linking arms with all the generations of wild women that had gone before us. And she pulled me closer. We could paint it. I kissed her and built a fire pit. She held my face. And then we heard this shattering scream. "Mummy!" It was Peace. "What are you doing?" Kirsten scrambled up. Peace stormed into my garden, trampling the sage and the strawberries. "You've gone mad!" "No, the Smithsons have called. Everyone's talking about you two." I looked up at my neighbour's windows and I saw a flash of movement. I tried to pull Kirsten back, but she shrank back. Peace shouted at me. "How could you take advantage of Mummy?" Had I? "You know she's..." Peace didn't finish her sentence. What was she going to say? Delicate? Vulnerable? Lonely? I'll never know. Instead, Peace reported us to the council. They came and bricked up our friendship gate. For good measure, they made the fence a little higher. Sorry, where was I? Yes, so step 1, you go into your garden. Step 2, decide what you want to plant. Step 3, plant it. Step 4, expect the unexpected. One evening, I heard a hooting, like a mateless owl. From my window, I saw Kirsten standing in the middle of her garden with her stick. She raised it above the fence. His little hand waved at me. I ran out into the garden, and I held its little gloved hand. Peace appeared. Kirsten dropped the stick. I held on. A door slammed. I never saw either of them again. It's important to stay positive. I'm still gardening. This was Kirsten's gift to me. All this. Still watching, are you? I'm thinking of naming the squirrel. Low felt, you bastard. Perhaps tomorrow I'll bring you some nuts. Kirsten told me it was important to touch soil every day. And seeing as we can't touch each other, this'll have to do.
Hello, we hope you enjoyed this evening's performances. We can't wait to discuss them with you on our Zoom Q&A. Check your emails for the link.
Your feedback is so important to our creatives. By getting involved, you can help shape the work of tomorrow. So take 5 minutes, grab a drink, and we'll see you online shortly.